this is the second training for Brennan, and I'll just be going through it like I normally do. So let's see. First thing I'll discuss. First thing, since the first training was about software, I'm going to go over how to replace the filament. So I'll do this both through the control panel in Replicator G and through the onboard menu here, which will, once I finish the software, I'll start going into the onboard menu. So on the computer over here, I will show Brendan how to use the control panel to replace the plastic. So first thing you want to do, if you're replacing the plastic, or should I stop? Okay.
No.
Right, so
Wait, forget I'm here and talk only to Brendan.
Okay.
Don't talk. Don't pretend that I am not here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're going to replace the plastic in the extruder, first thing you want to do is make sure that your extruders are at 230 degrees Celsius. If they aren't that hot, then the plastic is still going to be solid in the extruder, and when the motor turns, the plastic won't actually come out, or it won't come out of the extruder or go forwards.
Could you do 227, because that's how hot
Yeah,
that printer is.
as long as it's at least like 220, 230, as long as it's in that range, then the plastic will be melted. If it's any lower, like I had someone today accidentally print at 180, then nothing's going to happen because the plastic is still solid. So in order to do this, what you want to do, normally this will be set at 0, so you'll see everything here at 0. I won't change it, but anyways. So normally it would be like this, and then these are the current temperatures, so this is just room temperature, 30 degrees about. So in order to change the temperature to make it heat up, you can just type in into the target here. If you type in 230 and hit enter, and then type in 230 and hit enter, you can see on the graph here the target temperatures get set to 230, and you'll see that your extruders are going to start to heat. In order to replace the filament, we need it to be at 230 degrees, or else it won't work. So now you just have to wait for it to heat up.
Pull it out.
Right, so
It's warmed up, so
that it's
actually
liquid.
pull it
Yeah,
out.
if it's not heated, then it's still solid. So that's when you need to heat it. You don't need to heat the platform. You can just keep that at normal temperature, because we don't need the platform to change the plastic. While this is
If you
heating,
had it at 0, would it do anything different than 110?
well, because I haven't hit enter yet, it's actually not trying to hit 110 degrees Celsius. Once I hit enter, it'll start heating it. But right now, since I haven't hit enter, it's not going to heat it. So it'll just stay at normal
90.
temperature. Yeah. And then while this is heating, I'll go over here and I'll show you, in order to replace the filament, you're going to need to remove this tube, and I'll just show you how to do that. So you can see there's a gray tube here, and then there's like a white outline. But what you need to do, this is locked right now, so you can't actually just pull this out. In order to get this black tube out, which contains the filament inside, you need to put your finger on the gray tube here and hold it down, then you can pull the black tube out, and then you can see the plastic is exposed. So let's see, we're actually about 200 degrees Celsius. So I think I can start. I'll run the motor, and if it doesn't move, then I'll stop. But we should be hot enough. And by the time I get it going, it'll already be 220. So in order to remove the plastic, you're gonna need to reverse the motors. So because the motors have the plastic inside of them, there's these metal teeth on the gears that grab the plastic and keep it in place, and they run forwards, and they put the plastic in. In order to get the plastic out, if you run the motors in reverse, the gears will push the plastic out because they have a grip on the plastic, and then your plastic will come out, if that makes sense. So what we're going to do,
And then they just pull
this will come out on its own. You don't even need to pull it. Once it's completely loose, then you can just completely take it out. But first things first, right here on the software, you want to make sure that you're on the correct extruder. So because we're replacing the plastic in the right extruder, just make sure you're on the tab for the right extruder, right? And then what we're going to do, since we're taking it out first, because we want a new color, we're going to reverse the motor to take out the plastic. So we're going to hit reverse. You hear the motor start, and then this is going to start turning, and you just wait. You don't even need to pull it. You can just let it run on its own, and the plastic will come out. So almost done. Yeah, it's running. Let's see.
You can smell it.
Yeah. So now the plastic's out.
Then you have to cut that off.
So sometimes you'll see that if you don't cut the tip off, so we have this sharp tip, the motor won't be able to grab it when you're trying to put it back in. So
At all?
You can just keep it like this and then try to put it in. If it doesn't work, sometimes cutting it will help you out. I had this happen earlier where I had to cut it to get it to actually go in. So anyways, after you do that, on the back, the plastic is still mounted. So let's say we actually want to change the color here. So I have blue, I want to change the color. In order to get this spool off, you're going to need to pinch. On the back here, there's a flexible tube that that your filament is mounted to. So if you squeeze the tube and then at the same time push the filament off, you can release it and then just wiggle it off. Try not to hit the models off. I hit one off. But once you have the actual filament off, the plastic is still in the guide tube, so you just want to keep pulling it out until all the plastic is out of the guide tube. And then the proper way to put this plastic away is to first wrap it around to make sure it won't unravel. And then if you see, actually I overshot, so I'll just go to this one. If you see here on the side, there's a bunch of holes, so you can put the plastic through the hole once and then put it through the second hole. And this is just so it doesn't unravel. So we can put it on the cart now and it won't unravel on its own, so then we can, the next person that uses it doesn't have to start like winding it back up if it came loose. You can actually, because it's so long, I'm just going to put it through the next one. So this is good. Now we're going to grab another filament. Oh, thanks, but actually, I'll go for some ABS. I like this color. So we'll grab a new filament. This is ABS, although it doesn't necessarily matter what you use on the Replicator 1. So what we're going to do is, first thing, you want to always uncleat this from the spool. Because sometimes if you forget it and you keep it stuck like that, some people will try to run the motor while it's still stuck, and then the motor obviously can't pull it through because it's stuck in that hole.
Does it like burn?
No, it's just, you'll hear it clicking. I got it. You'll hear the motor clicking if it has trouble getting the plastic through. So anyways, with these ABS spools, you can see this pattern on here. This is how I recognize that it's ABS. But with these, if you put the sticker facing the inside, so this way, then you won't have a gap between the spool and the back of the printer. So if you have a gap, right now I don't, but if you were to have a gap, a lot of the time, when the filament comes loose a little bit, it'll wrap around that inner tube, and then it'll get stuck more easily. So if you put it in the right way with no gap there, then you won't have those kinds of problems.
And you have to like put it through.
Yeah, and then now I'm just going to make sure I have it tensioned, so I'll make sure it's not loose, and then I'll just feed it up the guide tube. So we'll just feed it until it comes out. There we go. Okay, so now that that should be okay. It should just melt it. Sometimes if it's really bent, then it might not go through the motor, but this looks okay. So now that we reversed it out to get the plastic out of the extruder, now we're gonna run it forwards, because then we'll take the motor, or the motors will run forwards, and we'll take the plastic back in. So we're just gonna hit forwards on the computer over here.
And when it starts coming out,
and then yeah, all you need to do is there's 2 holes in here. You just need to get it through both of them, and then you can just put some gentle pressure on, and then
I'll tell you when to stop.
yeah, what's it? There we go. And then once you feel the motors grab the plastic, so you'll feel it just pulling down on your plastic, then you can just let go and let it do it on its own. So if you look at it closely, you can see it's moving down on its own. So now the motor has it.
You can sort of wash them out too.
And then you'll see that I also can't pull it out. So once you're absolutely sure that the motor grabbed the plastic, then you can just take this black tube and just push it in.
It's coming out.
And it'll lock. And then
it's coming out as...
Right, yeah, now the old plastic, we had dark blue in here. Now you can see the dark blue that was left in the extruder. Yeah, now the dark blue that was left in the extruder is coming out, and this new green color is going to start replacing the blue.
That's so cool. Can I keep this thread?
Yeah, if you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep it running for a little, because we want to get all that excess blue out so that our next print can start completely green.
Look, it's like dark
You can see
green.
it start to change, yeah. We just want to make sure it's completely green, because otherwise the first few layers of our print are going to be like slightly bluish,
I have
and it'll look
to
bad.
match it too. Well, no, it's the correct color.
That's still, yeah, that's still pretty blue. I think that looks pretty clean right there. I think I can stop it.
Yep, that's perfect.
Yeah, so I'll stop it. You can just remove the thread. If you want to keep it, you can.
Because it's cool.
Right. And then just make sure you stop the motor afterwards. Although, since it's on a time limit, it should stop anyway, so we should be fine with that. And yeah, so now our plastic is changed. I think now I'll go over the onboard menu, and we'll get to how you do it through the onboard, like how you change the filament through the onboard menu, because there's two ways to do it. But first, I'll just go over the onboard menu. So, this is the main menu for the onboard menu. Wherever it says the replicator, that's just saying that it's the main menu, like the first screen. So you have a few options: build from SD, preheat, utilities, info, and settings. The way you navigate through the menu is up and down will move your arrow up and down, so you can hover over something and select it. The way you would select something like build from SD is by hitting this red button, and you can see you go into the menu.
The maker button.
Yeah, and to get out of a menu, you can hit left, and you'll go back to the original
Like
menu.
a back button.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you want to go back to it, do you just...
That actually doesn't work like that. There are a few things that use the right button, but not many things use the right button, and I'll show you later how that works. Anyway, so I'm gonna go over what build from SD is. So we're gonna select it. You can see here there's a bunch of models, and you can see the file extension .x3g. So normally we're used to seeing STL and G code as file extensions, but now we're seeing this new file extension called X3G.
I'm assuming 3G is perfect.
No. It's just this is a file format where it takes G code and it converts it into what's called an X3G, so that this printer can print off of an SD card. So right now, everything that's appearing here is actually stored on the SD card, and I'll show you how to do this right now. So we're gonna back out for a second. I'm gonna remove the SD card. All you need to do is push it in, and the spring will push out your SD card. Right. And then down here on this laptop, this is where the SD card slot is. It's right here. There's a dummy card just to keep dust out, to protect the port. So we're going to put in a new card, like so. It's in. Now, on the computer, it'll say right off the bat, it'll say that your SD card is mounted. I'll just close this. So in Replicator G...
Should I put this in here?
Oh, whoops, I closed it. Huh? Oh, no. We just leave that, yeah. That's for the computer. Wait for Replicator G to boot. Alright, here we go. So, in Replicator G, the way you take G code and you turn it into X3G is this button right here. So it actually says it. But build to file for use with SD card. This will only work if you have G code already generated. So you need G code generated. So once you hit this button, you'll get this interface. It'll ask you where you want the files to go. So usually it'll start in like My Documents or something. In order to get to the SD card, go to Computer, and you'll see three options. Here's the SD card. I'll hit Open. Then you can see those models that I showed you earlier. Now the computer's reading it. You can just, this name might be too long, so I'll
do build from SD? You have to do build from SD? Yeah,
in order to print from an SD card. But I'll just do 3rd gen for the iPod case. Make sure this is X3G. So the difference between S3G and X3G, it actually says it here, but since our machine is on 7.3 firmware, you actually need to make sure it's an X3G, not an S3G. S3G was made for anything earlier than 7.0 firmware, which is what we used to use, but we've updated, yeah. And I'll show you later how to figure out what version we're on. But we want to use X3G, and then you can just save it to the SD card. So if you do this, save it, it'll start building it, or it'll say that the software is building your model, but it's actually just converting your G code to an X3G. And then it'll say build finished. When it says it's finished, then it's just finished converting. So you can hit OK. It didn't actually print anything. Yeah, it says a minute, but it's shorter. I think it just uses the smallest number. It probably won't say build finished in 1 second. Anyway, so now that we did that, we can just remove the SD card. So just push it in, the spring will push it out. We get the SD card, we put it back in here. So get in the SD card slot, push it in, the spring will grab it. Now if you click build from SD, you can see that new file that I just put. 3rd gen. So you can see it's appeared on the SD card. And in order to print it, I can just hit the red button and it'll start printing it. Which I'm not going to do because there's a problem with the printer that I have to resolve.
Really?
Yeah, I can explain that later. It'd probably get a little technical. But, Anyway, so that's built from SD. Just yes, hit select to print it. Hit the red button, and that'll print it. Next is preheat. So preheat is what heats the elements of your printer beforehand. So anyway, if you were to
work if there was no heat.
Yeah, exactly.
Plastic.
Yeah. So if you come in and you know you're gonna print soon, it's a good idea if you use preheat to heat everything beforehand, right?
Like
because,
food.
Yeah. So what'll happen is if you're waiting for G-code to generate, for example, and it finishes generating, but you forgot to heat your printer, yeah, you'll be ready to print because you'll have the G-code, but it won't be up to temperature. So you're gonna have to wait another 5-6 minutes to have everything heat up. So if you just use preheat, which is here, to heat all of the elements of the printer beforehand, then you can save a lot of time.
Just like
because once
click preheat and then generate this, and
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it'll probably be finished around the same time.
Yeah, if you just preheat beforehand, then once you generate G-code, you can just hit build instead of waiting for it to heat. So it just saves a little bit of time. It saves like 5 minutes. So anyways, what you see down here, you see right tool, left tool, and platform. When it says on, that means that it's heating it.
Right tool, left tool.
Right. Yeah. So
it's still on. It's still on the. You forgot to stop.
No, it's not.
The motor's on.
No, that's the fan. If you mean the sound that you're hearing. Yeah, it's off. No, I turned it off for sure. But anyway, so if you were to turn one of these off, that would, if you just hit select on it, it'll turn it on and off. This just means if you turn it off, it's not going to heat it. Yeah, it
so
will
like
just
if
won't heat
you're
it.
only using one nozzle, why waste the time of preheating both?
Yeah. Although one thing is with the extruders, if you preheat the extruders, the left and right tool, they actually heat at the same time. So if you turn one of them off, you won't really save that much more time. But if you were to turn off the platform, for example, you can save a lot of time because the platform heats beforehand.
One of them and
yeah, well, it does the platform first, then the extruders, and it won't let the extruders heat until the platform goes.
It doesn't matter if you make a different one. If you don't heat it up.
It's important to heat the platform because otherwise your ABS won't print very well. So if you are just gonna print, then you should heat everything. But maybe if you're just extruding, if you're changing filament, then you would want to turn platform off and then just use preheat that way. So anyways, in order to start the preheat, once you have everything turned on, you would just select start preheat, and then you'll get a progress bar down here, and you'll get temperature readings. So as you can see, right, it's pretty cool right now. And you can see here that the platform is heating before the extruders are, so the extruders are actually waiting for the platform to heat first. Yeah, just to let you know. And the platform usually takes a while to heat.
That bar is telling you how much longer?
Yeah, until everything's up to temp. Actually, I think there's a progress bar specifically for the platform, and then it should reset for the extruders.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So you can actually just back out using left, and it'll still, like the left button, and it'll still be heating, so you don't need to worry about that. So meanwhile, I'll talk about some utilities. So in utilities, you have monitor mode. This is actually what we just saw in preheat. It's the same exact thing. When you start a preheat, it actually just opens up monitor mode. What do you mean? Oh yeah, this is just for looking at the temperatures. You can't actually set temperatures. But yeah, this is once you start preheating, preheat actually just opens up monitor mode. It opens this script.
How long does this take?
Heating. It depends.
And can you stop a preheat?
Yeah, you can. That's actually a good point. To stop a preheat, I'll go back. Just go to preheat again, and this time instead of start preheat, now it says cool. So if you were to select cool, now it stops heating it, and it'll take a while for everything to cool down. It doesn't actually cool it, but
preheating the whole time.
no, I think that was still dropping from when we changed the filament. So remember how it got to 220? It was cooling, and it's still cooling.
That's good.
Yeah,
then.
that's good. Yeah.
It would probably be cooled by the time it's finished.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna start the preheat again in case I do anything with it. So, but yeah, that was a good question. I forgot to mention that. So yeah, that's monitor mode is just for temperatures. It gives you the same progress bar. This is what preheat uses.
So even if it's still cooling down, even if it's at like 65 degrees and you click preheat again, it'll go up.
It'll go back up. Yeah. It'll go up from any temperature you have, unless it's 220. If it's like 230 and you have the preheat set to 230, then it won't heat it anymore. And I'll show you how to change the temperatures for preheat in a moment.
It's on the computer, right?
You can do it on the computer, but there's also options for preheat that's built into here. Alright, so next is change filament. So this is the second way to change filament apart from the control panel over here.
Load right, unload right, unload left, unload.
Right. So like we were doing here, you have the options to pick between left and right extruder, and then the equivalent of reverse on the software is unload here. So if I wanted to reverse right, I would unload the right, and it would do the same thing as like it'll take out the plastic. And then, you know, load left and unload left is the same, like reverse and forwards for left. So if I were to just hit unload right, if I wanted to take this plastic out, the good thing about the script that's built into here for changing filament
is this
is
supposed
that,
to mean that's here when?
Yeah, this is heating. This is like a progress bar for heating. So in the script that's built into the onboard menu, it'll actually prevent you from unloading the filament if your extruders aren't at 230 degrees Celsius. Whereas on the computer, if you just do reverse, if on the computer if you just do reverse, it'll start reversing the motors without confirming whether the extruders are at 230 degrees or not. Yeah, it's bad because if it hasn't been heated yet, the plastic is still solid in the motors.
So you probably want to do this because then if you have a better chance, because if you forget one small thing on this.
Right,
this is more complicated.
Yeah, the only reason I like this is because you'll see sometimes if maybe, I don't know, the tip of your plastic is shaped weirdly and the motor has a tough time grabbing it, you'll see that if you just run the script, all the script does is just runs the motor in one direction, reverse or forwards, depending on which one you pick. But you don't have any control over like when you stop the motor and like when you reverse and go forwards.
How do you make it stop?
On this, you would hit left and you do quit this process. So you can quit out at any time. You can also just keep hitting the red button, and if you read through the text, eventually it'll say press M to exit, so then you can exit the script. The reason why I prefer this is just because I have so much more control.
Like, click.
Yeah, well, and you'll also see this doesn't happen that often, but if I were to have a problem with the extruder, you'll hear this clicking sound that's like, it's pretty consistent, it's like this kind of speed, and you'll just hear the motor clicking and nothing's going to happen. It's not going to go forwards or reverse.
Maybe we can hear it.
Yeah, you can hear it.
Maybe we'll hear it in this.
You'll still hear it, but you just can't do anything about it. You can stop the script, but it's not as easy to correct the issue. So normally, there's a few things that can cause that problem. It could be the extruder's not being at the right temperature, so the motor, like, the plastic is solid.
Say like the tip's like this.
Yeah, it could also be like really thin, and then the motor can't grab it. Alright, so this is just this is what's called help text. I'll show you that later, how to turn it off, and I keep it on just so that people can read it because it's pretty informative. So if you just go through it and read it, it'll explain to you what to do. But all this is doing is just unloading my filament, so it's doing the exact same thing that I did on the computer. And you can see now my filament is out.
I just exited it because it was already out.
Yeah, thank you. And then now that it's out, you could do, let's say this was new plastic. Now I would load my right extruder again to put in the new plastic. Because it's already heated, it doesn't wait for it to heat. And then I can just put my plastic back in. And hopefully, maybe I'll get the problem with the clicking.
I hear it coming in.
Yeah, it's going. Never mind. So anyways, now that the motor has it, I can just...
What happens if you start pulling it up, so like it can't pull it down?
Oh, I wouldn't resist the motors. That's probably bad for the motors. It'll burn it out. It's just like any resistance to the motors running isn't really good for the motor, and I wouldn't play around with it like that. Yeah, that would be dangerous. Yeah, I'll stop it. So you can either hit M to exit once you get to the end of the script, or you can hit left and hit yes to quit this process. So then it'll stop. So that's change filament. Yeah, I was just demonstrating, my bad. And then just to say really quickly, if you have that problem when the motor starts clicking, when it has problem unloading or loading the plastic, the way to fix it is usually, let's say you're reversing it and it starts clicking. Usually if you run it forwards for a little bit, stop it, and then quickly reverse, it usually frees it up. So normally it's like a problem with plastic blocking the extruder. If you run it forwards, it usually melts whatever's like in the way, and then if you reverse it, it should be free. So that's one way to fix that clicking problem. But also just always make sure your extruder's at 230 degrees. This is a graph of the current temperatures of your extruders. So you can see it's color coded here. and then it'll just show you what the temperatures are, and here's your temperatures over here. So that's that. Next on the Airborne menu is level build plate. So I would run the script, but there's a slight problem with the printer. So what this does is I can actually show you on the jog controls.
That's the plate.
Yeah, this is the plate.
Then
And
platform's 111.
Alright, so let me also just
Oh, you
explain.
can actually build that?
Huh?
You can actually do that?
Do what?
You're generally Jackson.
Yeah, it's fine. That's just the highest point. So anyways, let me just explain jog controls.
Once you
really fast.
printed off that, would that be like a good printing thing or?
If I were to print like this, then it wouldn't work because the extruders are touching the platform, so they would be clogged by the platform, so no plastic would come out.
Actually, it probably would, but it would go like this and
Normally,
eject, so-
if you actually print like that, you'll see that nothing comes out, and you hear the motor clicking because it can't push the plastic. But let me explain jog controls really fast. I just can't run the script because there's that problem with the homing again, so I have to get that resolved. But I'll show how to level it. So anyways, in jog controls, this is just this is the second part of the control panel, and this is what lets you control where your extruders and the platform is. So you can just, I mean, essentially, the z-axis is the platform, and then x and y is the extruder.
It was
So
melted
if you-
on the front of that.
yeah. So if you were to do Z plus, for example, it'll move your platform down. It's kind of
Looks
self-explanatory because everything moves in the direction. Like
Wow, there
if
are
you,
colored lights up there.
huh? Those are just the LEDs that come with the printer. That's just a feature. But if you were to do X minus, it's pointing. The arrows here are pointing to the left, so then your extruders will move to the left. It's pretty self-explanatory. But you can use this to move your printer. Well, move the printer parts when you need to.
If you needed to, like, you didn't want to have to, like, move the actual thing on the program, you could just do that so it starts printing there.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you just need to, let's say, calibrate the platform, leveling the build plate, because I already did jog controls, I think. Yeah, I did that good enough. Right. So I'll just get him in position first. So that's the highest it'll go. So in order to level the build plate, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the extruders close enough to the platform so that a piece of paper will fit under the extruder, but not so close that the extruder is actually touching the platform, and your piece of paper won't go under the extruder. So I'm actually going to use the training sheet, but let's see.
Wait, don't.
Alright, fine. No, this is too thick. I use the reason why we use paper is because it's very
Wait,
thin,
wait,
and
can
it'll
you use
mimic
that? No, okay.
the thickness of a layer. So let's see. I'm gonna put some there. It's not gonna catch fire. So you can see that my paper fits on the extruder, and what you're looking for is you want it to be so close to the platform that it's there's some resistance when you pull the paper in and out. Right now there actually isn't much resistance, so what I would do is since there's these 4 knobs on the bottom of the platform, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the 4 corners, if I turn some of the knobs clockwise, so if you look at it from the bottom, I turn it clockwise, that'll raise the platform a very small amount. So horrible grinding noise. Yeah. So that's why I would.
We should teach it on another.
Yeah. Should we just switch? Because there's a problem with this script, with this machine. Let's move to the other printer. So, here, I'll take my
That
paper.
sounded too strong.
That's okay.
Just grab this chair.
At least there's like a
Oh,
mock-up.
that's okay. No, that's okay. We can still calibrate it.
Invalid command.
It's okay. So, we need to utilities. Movable plate. Alright, so because we have help text shown on, which I'll talk about later, you can see there's a bunch of text explaining what is going on right now and what to do. But I'll explain it on my own so it's easier to understand. And it's also hard to read this. So, over here. Okay. So what this script does is it brings your extruder from point to point. So it'll bring it to the back middle, it'll bring it to the left, to the right, it'll bring it to extremes such as like the far corners, and then it'll bring it to the middle, And what it's asking us to do is it's asking us to calibrate the platform. So like I said earlier, we're trying to get the extruder close enough to the platform that a piece of paper will fit under it. And we also want it to be close enough that there's some resistance when you push the piece of paper under the extruder. So I'm actually going to bring this closer so that it's easier to see. But right now, if I were to run the paper under, let's see if it even goes. It actually looks like it. This is kind of a bad point. Let's see. It's actually a terrible angle.
No, it needs leveling.
Yeah, well, it's hard to fit under. Okay, there we go. And yeah, so you can see it's not going to fit under right now. There's also that piece of plastic in the way, but it looks like it won't fit under right now. So because it's too close to the platform, and what we're going to do is we're going to turn the knob counterclockwise. So if you look at the bottom, we're going to turn it counterclockwise this way. And what this will do is it'll lower the platform a slight amount. So you can also, as I turn it, I also judge by eye and then by paper. But by looking at it, I'm just going to make sure that I have enough space. And then I'll use the paper to make sure that I calibrate it properly. So there's actually a piece of plastic.
In the way.
Yeah, in the way.
Should I get something?
Yeah. Alright. This looks like it should be the right calibration. There's plastic under the extruder. And you can see here, someone went under.
Yeah.
We'll just pause it for a second. So we're using a smaller piece of paper and we got it to fit better from the side, which I should have done to begin with. But now you can see, you can probably hear this as well. You can hear that scraping. It depends on the print. Normally this is kind of what you want. You might want a little less tension between the paper and the nozzle, but this is about what you want. So we're going to adjust the knob. I'm going to turn it counterclockwise a little bit, which will free up the extruder more. And now there's barely any scraping. I'm actually going to undo it a little bit so I have a little bit tension. But this is about what you want between your piece of paper and the platform. Next, if you just keep hitting...
Next time, let him feel the tension, just so we can feel what the tension is.
Yeah. So we're going to place the paper under the extruder again. If I can get it. Nope. Actually, okay, so right now the extruder is too close to the platform. So in order to get it further away from the platform, we're going to turn it counterclockwise again. So I'm turning the knob counterclockwise. Now if I run the plastic under, the paper under, it fits under the extruder. Now just to make sure that I have a good height for the extruder, I'm going to tighten it by turning the screw clockwise a little bit. And now I have some resistance, so if you feel that, if you pull it, pull the paper, you'll feel the tension. Do you want, wait, if you pull the paper, yeah. Do you feel how it's like resisting? There's like a little bit of friction between the extruder and the paper. You don't want too much, but you just want a little bit. Here, yeah, if you can get it. We'll do it from the side. So if you feel that, right, it's resisting it. Okay, so that's what you're going for. And then obviously you would just keep repeating this process for each corner until it's properly calibrated.
Because that means it's flat.
Yeah, that means it's the extruder has a good height to the platform. That looks pretty good, and we don't want to spend too much time on this because this will take a while. But you would have to do this on your own. So I'll just, in order to quit this script, you can just hit left, and then quit the process, or you can keep cycling through with the red M. So next, after level build plate, there's home axes. This is not necessarily that useful. What it does is at the beginning of every print, your extruder will move to the furthest point on the X and the Y axis, and then the platform will go to the highest point on the Z axis. And it's just what it does at the beginning of every print to make sure, it's to make sure that the extruder's in the proper location. And then from there, it'll begin the movement because It uses the end stops.
Like on most things, you see like a little trail of plastic and then the
Right.
thing.
Yeah, it uses there's switches here. So on this machine, there's a button for the x-axis, for the y-axis, which is back here, and the z-axis for the platform. And when this extruder goes to the furthest on the x-axis, it'll hit the button and the button will turn red and tell the machine
Is that what that
that it's at the
button is?
furthest point on the x-axis. Yeah, that's what that is. So it does this so that it knows that the extruder has to be in that corner. Without the buttons, it wouldn't know where the extruder is if you had manually moved it. So home axis just brings everything to the
I actually have that.
to what they call the home. Next is jog mode. So like I showed you on the control panel over here, we have jog mode, which lets us control the platform and the extruder where it is. So it's also built into the onboard menu here. So the way I explain this is if X is on the top and the bottom. Yeah, there is. If X is on the top and the bottom, we call this like, I'll just call it X mode. So right now we're controlling the X axis. If I would hit Y, it doesn't actually control it. It switches the mode so that I'm controlling Y now. So you can see Y is on the top and the bottom. And if I switch it again, now I'm controlling the Z axis since it's on the top and the bottom. And then in order to actually move these things, once you're in that mode, you can hit Z plus, which is down, and Z minus, which is up, to control the platform height. And then, if you wanted to do the y-axis, you would do Y minus to control the y-axis. So now it's moving this way towards us, and Y plus is that way. And then in order to get out of this, since this is mapped to the same as this pad here, you can see left is X minus, right is Z minus, up is Y plus. Yeah, so to get out, since back is in the middle, you would hit M, which gets you out. Next is a startup script. So this is what actually runs when you first turn on the printer. This isn't necessarily that useful. It'll explain some things to you very simply.
Tutorial.
It's essentially a tutorial. So you can use this to refresh if you forget something. Right. So I'm just gonna quit out of it, but that's useful for refreshing. So next is enable steppers. Stepper motors are what lets you do your fine controls such as layer height and feed rate when you're printing. This lets you manually enable those motors, but this isn't really that necessary because when you're printing something, the stepper motors are enabled automatically because otherwise you wouldn't be able to print your objects with your specific settings. So that's just what that is. Next is blink LEDs. When you turn this on, this is kind of just a fun feature. The LEDs are actually off right now, but it'll blink your LEDs on and off. And we can turn them on in a bit in the settings. So that's.
Is that what those green lights were?
Right. Those are just the LEDs. You can see they line the top here. So next is info and settings. Info and settings. The first.
Wait.
Yes.
On that, what's XX speed and Z speed?
So XY speed and Z speed is just when I hold down X or Y, it's how fast this moves. So right now you can see it's moving fairly slowly. If I were to increase the speed, you can see it moves a lot faster. So that's what that is. Right, okay, so next on the menu is info and settings. First option is bot statistics. And this just gives you the lifetime total for how many hours it's printed. So this says 65 hours.
This was 32 minutes?
Yeah, that would actually make sense. So yeah, just give you some useful information, or not useful, just cool information.
5 hours.
Right. And then general settings. So here you can turn on sounds. This just plays a little jingle at the end of a print, stuff like that. That's what the sounds are.
If you turn sounds off, does it stop that high pitch speed?
No, that's just a machine. That's probably a motor running. So that there's nothing you can do about that.
You have to fix that because that's unfair.
Yeah. Next is LED color. Right now the LEDs are off, but you can pick whichever color you want. This is, you can change it if you please. So, yeah, I'll just pick blue for example. You can see the, whatever, I'll go green. We'll match them. Next
and
is...
now you can do the blink LED.
Yeah, and then I can show you that too. But next is accelerate. So what accelerate does is when you're printing at high speeds, which is anything above 45 or 40, that's considered fast or accelerated. Accelerated is anything above 80 millimeters a second feed rate. And in order to be able to print that without the machine shaking itself to bits because it's the extruder is moving so fast, you turn on acceleration, which instead of the extruder moving and coming to a stop and quickly moving again, which creates the shaking, it gradually
slows
decelerates,
down,
yeah, and accelerates.
And then speeds up and
Right,
slows down.
so that there's less shaking because at speeds like 120 millimeters a second, which is the fastest you can
Would it
go.
go like
If you didn't have it,
this?
yeah, if you didn't have
And then
accelerate
if you
on,
didn't with the accelerator, it's like,
it's not as smooth as that, but it definitely helps with the shaking. It improves it significantly, and that's why we always keep it on because if you don't have it on, printing at those high speeds would be really difficult.
heat hold.
Yeah. So next is heat hold. This is when you preheat your extruders. It's how long after you preheat it will it stay at that temperature for. So the replicator printers have a mechanism built in where if you preheat it and you just forget about it and you leave it idle for some time, the heaters will turn off on their own just to save you power, I suppose. So this is just saying
But if you're
after I
actually
preheat.
trying to find something that's annoying,
Yeah,
if
I
you,
mean,
like, preheat it and then you like accidentally leave.
right, then it would turn off. So that's why if you know that you might be doing things in between, you could set it to stay heated for 5 minutes before it actually turns itself off, so that maybe if you wanted to get a drink of water,
So it's like
it
holding
wouldn't.
its heat.
It's holding the heat. It's keeping it
Or
heated.
had to go to the bathroom.
Right. Yeah. And whatever you need to do. So
Help text.
next is help text. So
Telling you what to do.
yeah, what you saw earlier in things like, I can actually show you an example. Right. Well, yeah, I'll turn it on so you can see. In things like utilities. Whoops. You go to utilities and level build plate. Wait for this. If you look here, we'll see it pop in a second. This is help text, so it's just explaining.
Also, it's like
what to
telling
do.
you what to do if you're
Right.
sort of new
So it's
to
like
it.
helpful text. Yeah. So that's help text. And I keep this on because it helps everybody. You know, it's nice to just have on. Next is heat LEDs. So when you're preheating
Oh,
the
would
machine,
that like help something sometimes?
what help text?
Like
Or
no,
heat
like
LEDs?
help like this
Oh,
be
no,
made.
no. If someone just doesn't, if they're unsure as to what a script does, they can look through the help text and read it, and then they'll understand what the function of the script is. So if they don't know how to level the build plate, they can read through that text and it'll tell them how to level the build plate. Next is heat LEDs. So this is when you're preheating the printer, you'll actually see the LEDs change color if you have this setting on. And then once it finishes heating the extruders, then the LEDs will change back to the original color. Yeah, whatever you have it set to. This is just nice so you can see if it's still heating at a glance, you know, if you just look at the colors. Next is tool count. So we have a single tool count because we have one extruder. On the replicator one over there, we have a dual tool count because there are two extruders. So that's just what this is. And then next it just says heated plate, no, because the plate is not heated. But on the replicator one, this will say yes because the plate is heated.
It's probably not heated anymore because we left it for a
Yeah,
little.
it probably cooled down. Next is preheat settings. So in
Oh.
here you can actually tell it what temperature you want it to preheat to. So when I actually start preheat, if I change the number
mess
here,
with that.
well, you shouldn't.
Unless
230
someone
is a fine
accidentally
temperature.
set it down. Like
Yeah,
someone
and,
had it on 227.
Like technically, well, 220 is fine as long as it's within 220,
I said
240.
227.
No, then that's fine. But you can just.
That's
This is
actually-
useful for anybody that forgets the temperatures. They can refer back to here and they'll see that 230 is the
Couldn't
is
it
a
just
good
go to
temperature for
that?
the extruder.
Isn't that simpler?
No,
to
this
find
this
out?
won't. This doesn't actually have it. If you restart the software, this always starts in 0. You would have to type in 230 on your own. So this is like a pretty
Okay.
easy way to find it. Next is version number. This is just saying what firmware we're on. This is actually one version behind. The newest one is 7.3, so I should update that. Although it's not the end of the world, but this just this tells you
What
version
does the new version
firmware you're
have?
on. I actually didn't read the patch notes, but they probably
You're
explain
gonna
something.
need to know for
No,
these
usually no. It's usually not too
for
bad.
teaching, you're gonna need to know.
Maybe, yeah. Next, restore defaults. This is just restoring defaults. Please don't do this because we have our own specific settings on for the printers. But that's just what restore defaults is.
So that's
So-
basically just like keep off, don't go in
Yeah,
there.
just don't bother with it. Don't reset our settings. So that's everything with the onboard menu.
You'd have to like find out what everything is.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get in trouble, you're gonna have to find out everything and fix it before someone sees you,
Yeah.
which is gonna take like 3 days.
So the next the next thing we want to go over is replacing tape on the platform.
You just
So
take
for-
off the tape and put it back on.
Well, yeah, wait, let me see.
But you're gonna have
I'll
to move
use-
it down, right?
Use this channel. So,
Z minus,
Z plus.
and then you just like take that
Yeah,
off.
well, with this printer, okay, so with both of the printers, you don't want to replace tape that much unless you really, really need to, because it's
Like,
expensive
if that's
material.
there?
Huh?
If that's there.
That's fine actually. I'll explain in a second, but
Did this
Sure.
just take some color off?
yeah, it prints on it, and then when you peel it off, it'll take some glue with it. It'll take some tape with it. But this is actually fine to print on as long as there aren't too many bubbles. You can actually just press it down.
There's
Painter's tape actually goes down really easily. If you don't have any bubbles, you can print on this again many times. So just don't replace the tape too much if you don't need to, because
This
it's
is
expensive.
like-
Unless the entire, all the tape is scratched and
Then
you can't actually move it in Replicator G to somewhere where it won't be affected by the scratches, then you might have to replace it. And if you were to replace it, then just
Take
we
off
have
the tape?
we have two different sizes of tape, so you should probably try to use.
Large.
You don't want to use too much. Like here, it looks like there's too many layers. I'm not really sure how they did this. Normally, what I
that's
do is
one.
I take the thicker of the tapes. I make one layer here, I make a second layer here, and then there's a thinner piece of tape you use to finish it off here to replace the tape. But
What
once
is
again,
that
try not to
tape?
replace it too much.
Or did they do like?
Oh no, I'm just not sure how many layers they put here.
It looks
And
like
then if
one
it's
on this
really
side.
necessary to patch a hole, you can just take a piece of tape and cover it. But
that might
should-
affect them curl off.
well, you don't want too many layers, because then you're actually going to affect the height of the platform to the point where it won't be calibrated when it goes over that layer of tape. So unless it's really necessary, you shouldn't really be
Unless
touching
it's
the
like
tape
an
too much.
actual.
Yeah,
like
and
the
if everyone
whole
takes
piece
care
of
of the tape, then we shouldn't have these. There shouldn't be any problems. So
Like
should be
this.
okay.
This.
Yeah, that's just what happens because the tape, the plastic
It's
sticks
clear.
so well. Right.
And
Next,
this is like filling.
next, should I explain the replicator tape? So let's see here. On the replicator 2s, we use
These are
painter's
two.
tape, which is pretty. It's pretty nice to use. It's a nice material. But here on the replicator 1s, we use Kapton tape, which is this golden material here. And you can see there's an aluminum that's still
And it
heated.
probably costs a lot.
Yeah, this is actually pretty expensive.
How much?
I don't remember. Sorry.
You shouldn't really
But-
waste it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
you
you
shouldn't
shouldn't,
waste
like-
anything if you don't need to. But
You
so-
shouldn't make like tape balls.
Right. So you shouldn't be printing on the metal surface, which is why we use the Kapton tape. The plastic is meant to stick better to the Kapton tape, which is why
Still,
we use it.
It's better
Um,
because it like.
And then let me
it's thick.
just move it down so we can see it better. So the only reason you would ever
Should I
change
clean
the
that
tape,
off?
no, it's
That
fine.
looks a little messy.
It's fine. You would change the tape when there's too many scratches or bubbles on the surface.
Like
so
that? Or to,
yeah, it's hot.
oh,
Don't
yeah,
touch it right
whatever.
now.
It didn't
But
really
if you look closely, you can see there's a few
97
bubbles here.
Celsius.
Yeah,
Like
you can see
a
there's a
couple
few
hundred
bubbles here.
degrees.
And
Actually,
if
that's
you
like-
were to print on a bubble, you'll have something like this happen, where you have a
Wait,
dent.
where's that iPhone?
It'll
case?
have an
Here,
imprint
this
on the
one-
plastic.
This one had a big
Yeah,
bubble.
yeah. So that's what it looks like
Same
when you
here.
print on a bubble.
Wait, did
so
they
that's-
just
that's
like
okay.
make the same brand?
I don't. Yeah, probably.
This one isn't finished.
Yeah, neither
Yeah.
of them are. But anyway, so
It isn't-
it's okay to print on a bubble. It'll just look, you'll see like a little,
dent.
you'll see a little mark, but it's not the end of the world.
And
You'd only
I
want
don't
to
think
change
it
the tape.
affects it up here.
Yeah, it won't. It won't. Although you will see it when the plastic, the first few layers go down, you'll actually see it bulge up a little bit, but it
And
should
the
be okay.
speed affects this already.
That's a separate. Yeah, that's separate. So you want to make sure that you only change the tape if there's a lot of scratches. So you can see here there was actually a little cut in the platform, so you can see there was like loose tape.
This one's actually
if it gets
pretty
pretty
old,
bad, you'll
probably.
see tape cut all over the place, and then at that point. You'd only want to change it
take
if
it off?
there's nowhere you can move your model in order to avoid any like cuts in the platform.
And don't
'Cause
make it
if you
bigger on
print-
purpose just to change it.
Yeah, so if you were to print on a cut in the platform, then you'll see like the tape kind of mesh in with your plastic, and then it'll start printing on the aluminum as well. And then a lot of the time it might also tear more tape if the extruder
When
kind
you
of pulls
take
on
it
it
off,
in the right way.
it goes like whoop.
So yeah, just don't replace this in excess.
And how do you
if it
do
doesn't need
two
to be.
colors?
That's I'll have to.
Did they
explain
make
that
all
later.
three of these separate and glue them together?
No, that's one print, but I'll get to that later. So, yes, in order to replace the tape, first you want to make sure it's cool, because obviously you don't want to touch it too much if it's really hot. That's going to hurt. So what you want to do is, the way we do it is, we take one sheet off at a time. You can actually take off two if you need to,
78
because
Celsius.
sometimes it'll overlap, and then you'll have to take off both.
You just said overlap.
Overlap, I meant, my bad.
Like,
So what you're going to do is, on the tape here, I actually already have it folded over because I was showing someone earlier, but what you do is, in order to use the tape, you're going to have to peel off a certain amount, and with that first, with the first little bit of tape, although I already have it folded over, I'll just show you again, you want to take the tape, the sticky part, and fold it over itself just a little bit, not too much, and then this way, you have a non-sticky surface to hold on to. That way you can manage the tape without having it stick to your fingers. And one of the issues with Kapton tape is just that it's so light and prone to static that you'll see it curl onto itself and stick. And then when you try to uncurl it, like
the
get it off of
stickiness
itself,
goes like.
well, there'll just be like a wrinkle permanently in the tape, which means that when you try to put it down, you're going to be making more wrinkles, and there's no way around it. So what you're going to do is, once you have this folded over
And that
to
was
make it
bad
easier
for
to handle,
if it like sticks back down.
it's not terrible. You just don't want to curling it to itself, because you can see I haven't made any wrinkles yet, but you
they're
don't want
pulling.
any bad wrinkles. So then you would just pull out an appropriate amount that'll cover the platform.
That's gonna wrinkle up.
Yeah, if I put it down slowly, it should be okay. Yeah, this should be okay when someone reuses it. But, oh no, as long as you don't crease it in, it should be fine. Like if I put it back out, it should be okay. But anyways, in order to replace the tape,
But you're not gonna do that,
once
'cause
this is
then
off, you'll take your piece of tape, you don't want to take too much of it, you want it just to be
tiny bit.
the right width, yeah. Just a tiny bit over so you can
Could you like
trim the
put
overlap.
it down as if it's like 0 to room temperature? Could you put it down as you're unrolling it?
No, I would just do it separately, because you don't want to mess it up and waste tape. Okay, so in order to apply new tape, what you need to do is peel off one. Because it's overlapped, sometimes you're just going to need to take off both layers. And what you do is, once you have your full piece of tape peeled, you're going to start in the middle, so you can find that with the screws. And before you put the entire piece of tape down, you want to just first make sure that the middle is connected, so you can use your fingers to press the middle tape down. Just make sure it's connected, and then from there you want to still keep the tape off the platform and work your way out with your fingers. So you want to press the tape down and push out all the
I
bubbles.
bet you can touch it now. It's
Yeah,
61
I
Celsius.
kind of. It's still hot, but
A tiny bit.
yeah, you
I
can. So you
touched
want
it
to
when
work
it
your
was
way out.
97.
Yeah, you want to work your
I
way
didn't
out
get
and
hurt.
press like pretty firmly, and you don't want to just do one side and then the other. You want to do it evenly, and you want to make sure that you push hard enough that there are no bubbles or wrinkles, and don't speed through it, because you'll probably make some wrinkles. And then once you get to the end, just push it out and make sure it's connected. Then you can do the other direction.
Does
Normally,
a wrinkle really affect your print that much?
it's just nicer without wrinkles, because it's
Like,
nicer for everybody
is
else,
that
so
a
that they don't
wrinkle?
have so that they don't have to have marks in their prints.
Was that a
So,
bubble?
No.
was that
They're-
where-
So, if you have if your print stops sticking to the platform, which will eventually happen, where you'll see edges of the plastic start. So after you apply new plastic, or if your prints are curling off the platform, we have acetone, which we use to clean off any plastic residue and anything left on the platform. The way we do this, so we don't pour it on the floor, is if you tilt the can of acetone over and you stick your cotton in through the side, you can get a good amount of acetone onto the cotton without spilling on the floor. Then once you have acetone soaked onto your cotton, just wipe the entire platform down. Acetone dries pretty quickly, so you need to worry about drying it, but just make sure you clean it completely, and then you can print afterwards. Just make sure that you do this when the platform isn't too hot, because acetone will actually boil at pretty low temperatures. So
What
just
temperature?
around 80 degrees Celsius.
So you
So this is the end of our second training. If you want to start coming into the library to print, you can email Mr. Derry. His email is bderry@westportlibrary.org.